Welcome to Protea Weekly. My name is Zane Stevens. I'm the founder of Protea Financial. Uh, you can probably see right now, I'm supposed to be having a guest. A few technical problems, but I thought I would hop on and just make sure that you guys know that, we're going to be there. We're going to be involved. We're going to be talking to you all. Trying to see if our live feed is showing anything as well. It seems like it's blank, which is not great. Um, Whoop, there we are. Okay, video is up and going, so hopefully it'll all go smoothly now, and hopefully we get Rob Walker soon. He is trying to call me, so let me mute myself quickly and I'll. So still on the line with Rob, as you can see, he is showing up. We're having a few issues getting him going at this point.
Risa is having trouble getting a signal from your camera.
Hopefully he can figure it out shortly. He's trying a few different things. It'll be a great conversation with Rob, but this is sort of what it is about, sort of a live show. Sometimes it's not going to go smoothly. Sometimes it's not going to be perfect, but hopefully we get Rob soon. He's trying a few things. I still have him on the line. But what is really important is that today we were going to talk a little bit more about lines of credit. You are still a black screen.
Huh.
So Rob's still trying. We're going to speak about lines of credit.
I can try it on my cell phone.
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, let's try that. I'm going to hang up.
Okay, so Rob's not going to try a different method to try to get on this line, but the idea that I wanted to have Rob on here is that I spoke about line of credit and just different financing options last week, but I thought it would be very important to try to get somebody on the show that deals with this on a day-to-day basis. So Rob Walker is from Silicon Valley Bank. He's a person I've worked with a lot over the years. A large portion of our clients in the wine industry do use Silicon Valley Bank. I know they had some difficulties last year, but I believe in them, trust in them. They've got really great people, and they're a go-to for a lot of our small winery clients. Rob and I have worked together extensively, especially in the line of credit business. We actually have a client right now where we've just done an extension, which is not an easy process at all. It requires us to show historical financials as well as budgeting and forecasting, as well as provide a story to tell the bank why do we think that giving us this money for the short term availability of our business makes a lot of sense. And Rob is one of the best in the business to really just take that information, dissect it, ask all the right questions, and be able to get us in the point of view. You know, he's the idea is that he's hopefully going to be able to share some thoughts with us on what it looks like from the bank's point of view. What are they looking for? How does it make sense from their standpoints? Obviously, I mentioned this last week. Most of the time, they want deposits to come with it. So the focus there would be in sort of taking into account that if you're going to have a line of credit with the bank, they're most likely want you to be using their checking or savings facility as well. They want money coming in so that they can see what's happening in your activities. And there he is. There he is.
It's working now?
Perfect, 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 perfect. Um, I sort of just, I've been singing your praises without you on screen. Just telling people that we've been working together for a long time, and obviously The bank itself has had some issues last year, but still, I trust you guys 100% and a lot of big relationships. And I was talking about different ways to fund your business last week. Lines of credit were obviously a big one of them. You and I have been working on a line of credit for a mutual client for quite a while now, and I thought it'd be great to have you on to have a conversation quickly and just sort of discuss what is a line of credit, who's a good candidate for it, how does the bank see it from their side, and if a line of credit is an option, what other options could the bank possibly put in front of our clients to help them sort of manage their short-term cash flows?
Totally. No, appreciate it. Thanks for the, to start out with, thanks for the invite. And nothing but good things to say about Protea. And you guys have been great for our mutual clients. Really appreciate the good work over the years. So you want to start out with just what is a line of credit and take it from there?
Yeah, let's start there. What is a line of credit? Tell us all about it.
Yeah. So line of credit is I explain it as it's a tool. It's a type of loan to bridge short-term cash needs of the business. So as you're running your business, you'll have, especially with a winery, you'll have lumpy cash flows, and so in the simplest way, you'll have a cash need, be it bottling or paying payroll or any number of expenses you'll have come out throughout the year. And you may not have cash in the bank at that time, so you can use a line of credit to borrow some money on a short-term basis. And then when funds do come in throughout the cycle of a normal winery or vineyard, you can take those funds and then pay back the line of credit, and then throughout the year, borrow it up, pay it down, borrow it up, pay it down. So that's typically how a normal line of credit works. It gets a little bit more complicated in the wine industry just because there's such a long period of time between, or there can be a long period of time between a cash usage and a cash coming into the business. And that's where things get a little bit more complicated, but in general, it bridges short-term cash needs is what a line of credit is.
Yeah, what I take from that is that the revolving nature is really important of a line of credit, and I know from the conversation we've had that when your credit team are looking at it, especially for extensions, is looking at, hey, have they been able to revolve it, or are they just using a long-term loan, which obviously is not what they want. They want to see the revolution of cash on a regular basis.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a sign of health when you can repay the loan and revolve it down and borrow it up, even if it's just a little bit. We definitely love to see that when a line of credit just gets pegged at a dollar amount, and there might be a reason for it when that does happen. But when it gets pegged at a dollar amount and there's no repayment, we don't love that. And so if you can, even if it's a little bit, revolve it, borrow it back,
I mean, there's two kind of types of case scenarios that I've seen as well in terms of line of credits. And one of that is, the people that totally max it out and they struggle to revolve it. And you got the others who have a line of credit, but they never use it. How does the bank sort of look at those two scenarios?
Yeah. So let's start with the first one. Those that borrow it up and it's maxed out and don't revolve it, it kind of depends on the situation, because that can happen, and it can be normal for a company that's in a very fast growth stage. And so even when that happens, the situation might be okay, as long as we're seeing revenue growth and other things that the business owner would also want to see. And so I've had clients stress out about that, and as long as the fundamentals of the business are good, you might feel very tight on cash, but as long as the fundamentals of the business are good, and then it can be an okay situation. It's just really getting through this hump where, like a classic example would be, say you're making 1,000 or 2,000 cases or something like that, and you want to double it. Well, you have to go buy, spend $75,000, $100,000 on grapes, depending on where you're buying. If it's Napa, it's a totally different dollar amount. You have to take custom crush on those additional production. You got to buy barrels, you got to bottle it, and the period of time from when you crush it to when you're actually selling it can be many years. And so that becomes a cash need over a many year period. And so it could be perfectly normal for your line to get borrowed up and just be static for a period of time. And then what we'll really see after those few years is can it start to revolve at that point? But it totally depends on your production growth at that point, because if you continue to grow, it's just going to basically stay static. And that's where it really becomes important that the business is hitting its revenue numbers and doing the things that it needs to be doing. Because if it doesn't, it's just going to stay static. And then over the course of a few years, a borrower or the bank will likely want to term it out and get some principal payments on it. And then you got the flip side. Or go ahead.
So just a question, obviously, in that scenario where it is sort of sitting in that situation and the bank needs more information, I guess that's a key point and where people really need good bookkeeping and accounting resources to support them.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, that's where, I mean, it really goes back with I think we'll get into it later, but the initial loan request, especially with smaller growing wineries, the number one challenge to getting a line of credit or any sort of financing is the books, because that just is something that in many cases just doesn't get invested in early on. We see a lot of investment in the product and branding and things like that, but the back office can get neglected. And so that's something that I advocate early on, have a great bookkeeper, accountant, CPA, all those things, if not just for the bank, for actually allowing you to help run the business and determine hey, I should make this, say I make a new SKU and sell it at this price point. Is it actually profitable? Is this something that actually makes sense or not? If you don't have good books, you just don't know, you're just kind of guessing. You can maybe kind of back the napkin it, but without the good financials, that can be, that's the number one challenge, I'd say. So for many folks, it's getting your books fixed, because you're typically on a cash basis and you want to see accrual and are the good things that you guys do.
Great. So let's talk about that other case scenario where somebody's got a line of credit, they've applied for it, and then they just never use it. How does the bank see that?
Yeah, in that sort of case, if they're rarely using it, then they typically have a good cash coffer and cash, so they have good deposits basically. And so that can work perfectly fine where you have the line of credit that's unutilized, or maybe it's just used for seasonal needs. But the bank have that loan, and that's a capital that we've committed to providing the borrower, but we also have the deposit accounts. And so financially, it makes sense for us. It's more of kind of depends on I mean, we definitely have a number of clients that are like that. On average, borrowings over the history of our wine group are anywhere between 50 and 70% for the overall, everyone who has a line of credit. And that dropped down significantly during COVID to sub 50%, if I recall. And now we're trending back up with now that people have spent through their PPP and EDL and all these and just had great 21, 22 was kind of the top of the market. And now we have a large vintage for most folks, with big 23 vintage. And so people are starting to borrow into their lines of credit more. And so, for those very top wineries who have availability on their lines and just use it for seasonal needs or things like that, that's a great position to be in. It's hard to get there. It typically takes decades to get there, absent some unique situation or outside funding or something like that.
Well, I mean, I've been advocating for everybody to try to get a line of credit in place before they need it, because they will eventually need it, especially in the wine space, if they want to do any sort of growth. So it seems like that's fine as long as the deposits are living with the bank. The bank's happy. Yes.
Yeah. I tend to agree. It's one of those things where you want to ask for it before you really, before you need it, especially if you've had a good year. Yeah, and if there's deposits, then it can pencil out. Yeah, you just got to be able to explain it, and usually need a forecast and things like that at that point too, not just good books, but a good forecast to help explain to your banker, like, how am I going to use this? Because unless you're just really, really strong, it's a little bit tricky to be like, hey, I just want this just because, unless there's deposits, and then it can be a little, at least it financially makes sense for us.
Great. So let's get into what you sort of need to do to be able to apply for a line of credit. What is the bank looking for if somebody needs to go get one right now and they need to put some documentation together? Let's talk about that. Obviously, we spoke about strong financials, and that is obviously very important. Some sort of forecast, that seems important. But what else goes into it?
So those are by far the top two items. So we'll get, company prepared QuickBooks or whatever accounting system you're using. We'll get corporate tax returns. Depending on the size, that might even be flowing through your Schedule C of your personal tax return. And so we'll get personal financial information as well, a few years of personal tax returns, a personal financial statement, which shows your personal balance sheet, and that'll allow us to run credit reports. Specific to line of credit, we'll ask for an accounts receivable, accounts payable, case inventory report, bulk wine inventory report. And those are really the big things that you need to apply for a line. And the other big thing that we always ask for, and like is so core to like any say smaller or larger winery, is how much wine have you made and how much are you selling? So what are the last few vintages of production in terms of number of cases, and what do you expect that to look like going forward? And then how many cases are you selling the last few calendar years, and then what do you expect going forward? And because the answer to that question is really going to dictate like how are you going to use the line, how much is it going to get drawn up, what are your true cash needs going to be. That's going to tell like pretty much 90% of the story right there. Is just your production and sales historicals, and then go forward.
Yeah, it's always tough if you're producing 1,000 cases of wine but selling 500, and then want to tell the bank, hey, we're going to do this because we want to grow to 2,000 cases. And the question is, where are you going to sell it? Obviously, if there's no contract or commitment from a third party, it really, puts a bit of a damper on that situation straight away. So, strong sales. And it's one of those things we talk about all the time. Like, if you want to be a 4,000 case winery, start with 500. Get the demand for the 500, then go to 1,000, get the demand for 1,000, move it slowly. Maybe it doesn't have to be that low, but make sure you can sell what you can before you move on to the next level, else you can get yourself into some big trouble really quickly.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, with the market changing the last 15 years, like it's harder for smaller, say sub 10,000 case producers to go into wholesale and kind of ramp the business that way. It's not impossible at all. Like we have shared clients that have been able to successfully do it. But you're really dependent on DTC. And so there's only so much you can do with DTC and in terms of growth, at least fast growth. So I feel like you'd be even more careful there. And so, yeah, the bank's looking at, historically, like how have you grown the brand? What really like sets you apart in terms of your brand? Like, why is it successful? How are you able to sell and keep growing? And then like, you might have a great brand, but say you're good revenue trends, but your margins might be out of whack or something like that. And that can make it challenging. But if you have this compelling brand story, good historical financials, good books, good forecast, or reasonable forecast, and then also like if something did, I mean, because there always will be like challenges, things will pop up. If you have a little bit of cash outside the business, that can go a long way. If you have a lot of cash, that can go a really long way. We have plenty of clients that still haven't made a profit, but they have outside funding, and we can structure lines of credit and other debt for that. So yeah, you need all those things to have a good story, and then explain it to your banker. And like we want to do good loans and work with great clients, and so we want to lead with saying this is something we really want to do, and we need help from the winery to explain that story and figure out a way to do something that works for everyone.
Great. So probably the hardest question of them all: if a line of credit's not going to work for a business, what are some of the other alternatives the bank could do for them?
Yeah, a lot of times the challenge we have with, like, especially on the smaller side, is small lines of credit, just making them economically work. So when we're able to do one and say it's I call like a small line of credit like $500,000 or less. It's really, there's got to be like a really strong growth story and something that we want to support, and it's going to grow from, say, sub 500 to 500K plus over the course of many years. And so you could, for us, you could qualify for a loan, but we just can't economically make sense at that size. And so the other options are equity, like raise some equity, which is very, very challenging for any winery. It's just a hard market, and it always has been. There's SBA sort of loan programs that we usually point people towards if say the cash flow isn't quite as strong and it's harder to underwrite, or it's a size problem. And so people have had some success there. So you can like start with an SBA loan, either a term loan, or they do lines of credit, but from my understanding, they're not the greatest. They're a little challenging. And so you can, if you get your foot in the door with an SBA and then graduate to commercial, like a traditional bank commercial loan down the road, that's a good path. We see some private money, kind of friends and family money, things like that. More rare though. And just the space, especially for small lines of credit, is really tough. Like a lot of banks, you mentioned in your prior podcast, a lot of banks like just don't want to lend into it, and it's an economics thing and a risk thing. And then people just don't, I think the banks that do it don't understand like the scenarios where like someone borrows up and it maxes it out, and they see that as, okay, they can't revolve their line, that's a problem, but it may be a situation that it's actually okay. So you really have to have, like, I guess, a lot of expertise to really understand that gray area. I wish there was more of a solution there, but it doesn't really exist at the moment. So when we can't do it, but it's a good credit, recommend small local banks as well. That's a good place to start. But with the number of small wineries, it's really like bootstrapping it, and you just got to get to that point where you can qualify for a commercial line of credit or other debt, and it can be tough for sure.
Yeah, on that note, being a small business owner in general is tough. The wine space is even harder because you're relying on people's demand, and these economic climates make it even worse. SBA loans are a great option. If you can raise that debt, even better. Obviously, the important one is sell your damn wine, right? Get it out the door, collect that money. We're seeing a lot of people get in trouble because they're not collecting their AR, and they're so scared of losing those spaces. But you got to collect the money to be successful. Rob, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate you hopping on. I know we had some technical problems, but Rob is our first live guest ever, and I really appreciate his time. And I will be back next week, back on our Tuesday slot, 10 a.m. after spending some time at Unified. Thank you, everybody, for spending time with us this morning. Until next time, be kind.